66 books in God's holy word, telling the story of Jesus my Lord. The books of the Bible I love to read, the books of the Bible I love to tell. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, Kings, Chronicles and Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, and Nahum.
Hi guys! We've only got 6 books left in the Old Testament. I'm going to see if we can do them all. I'm not going to mess around, let's go! Following Micah, we have the book of Nahum, and the key word here is flood. Now here we find it's not just Judah and Israel that turn away when God's warned them and go back to their sins. It's the same with the city of Nineveh, very sadly. Jonah was swallowed by a giant fish for that city. But they've gone back. They've ignored what the prophet said. It has been 100 years, but still, they've turned away from God. And God's prophecy comes true. The Tigris River floods, washes away part of the city's walls, and then the Babylonian army sweeps through Nineveh like violent floodwaters. Next is Habakkuk, and the key word is watchtower. Now Habakkuk deals with a really important question that loads of people have. He raises the issue, why is God silent? Why doesn't he answer prayers? We're calling out to him. Why isn't God answering? Habakkuk is sitting in a watchtower waiting for God's answers. And in reply, God tells him, God will answer, but it'll be in his own way and it'll be in his own time, because God can see all of time. It's a really hard thing to understand. Even the prophet Habakkuk, all that time ago, struggled with it. But in the end, Habakkuk says, I will rejoice in the Lord. Zephaniah is the next book, and the key phrase is, Day of the Lord. Now Zephaniah lived in the time of King Josiah, and Josiah was a pretty good king. We've had some pretty terrible ones, but Josiah was not bad. And there was kind of a time where people turned back to God. And probably Zephaniah had something to do with that as well. They had a really faithful prophet around. Zephaniah warned them how terrible the day of judgment will be when God judges people and sees, oh, hang on, you've messed up. That's going to be terrible if they don't turn back to God and do something about their sin. But although the day of judgment will be terrible, and in the end of time, God will judge us. He will look at what we've done and whether we've decided to follow Jesus and be clean or not. But after that, beyond that judgment, there is joy, Zephaniah tells us, as God will make everything right again. Haggai. The key word is temple. Now you might remember in my last video I had the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, and Haggai was from exactly the same time. The people had been taken into exile and they'd come back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. And Haggai's book happens right when they've gotten quite well with the rebuilding, but they've stopped. And Haggai tells them to finish what they've started. For the book of Zechariah, the key word is Messiah. Now, Zechariah was friends with Haggai. His book comes from exactly the same time as the previous book, Haggai, and he's also encouraging people to finish the temple. But where Haggai is quite strict and tells them to get on with it, Zechariah is quite encouraging, and he consoles them and reminds them that the temple isn't just a building. One day in the future, we actually won't need a temple, because we'll have Jesus. Now, Zechariah didn't know the name Jesus. He didn't exactly know, but he knew that God would dwell among his people, and that he knew how important the temple was, and that at the moment they really needed it, but in the future they wouldn't. Finally, Malachi, and the key phrase is hearts of stone. Now, it had been years by this point since the people had been sent into exile and then brought back, and they had their temple. But guess what they did? They started doing the very same sins that had sent them into exile in the first place. So God sends Malachi to remind his people that although God loves them so much, they haven't returned his love. It's as if their hearts are made of stone. And this is the last book of the Old Testament. So many times we've seen prophets coming and saying things like this. And then what? The people just go back to their sins. We are going to need something more than a prophet. We're going to need someone to come and turn these hearts of stone into hearts of flesh. And that is a really good place to begin the New Testament and the story of Jesus, isn't it?